In this section, we're going to look at typical exam questions which tend to be a mixture of all the fraction stuff you've learned and using our order of operations, which you might be familiar with as BODMAS or BIDMAS. So as we go through these, we'll just take our time and make sure we're paying close attention to our order of operations and we're doing things in the right order. The other thing, if you look at example A here, is the word of appearing here. When we see that between two fractions like this word of can be replaced by a multiplication sign. So as a first step, sometimes I would encourage people just to rewrite that as 2 1/4 plus, and it's two things multiplying each other here. Now, what we need to do, because we are multiplying, I'm going to need to change this second fraction here into an improper fraction. Because as we know already, if we're trying to multiply two fractions together, we can't have mixed numbers involved. So 1 multiplied by 7 is 7, plus 5 is 12. So that's going to become 12 sevenths, which we'll write underneath here, 12 over 7. And the 2/3 here will just drop down. Now, because of my order of operations and the fact multiplication is being done first, we're going to do this section here first. Now remember, for multiplication, all we're really doing is top times top, bottom times bottom. The 2 1/4, we're not doing anything with that just now, so we'll just drop that down to the next line. Plus, and then top times top, 2 times 12 is 24, and 3 times 7 on the bottom is 21. Now at this stage, it might be a temptation to go straight on to looking at these two things and adding them together. But at all stages, when you're doing a long question like this, trying to get things into their simplest terms is probably a good idea, or getting it into a form that you like. So a couple of things with this 24 over 21. The first thing is that can be simplified, and that should make my life easier, so I'm going to do that quickly. 2 1/4. Both of 24 and 21 are in my 3 times table, so I can divide both of them by 3, and that gives me 8 over 7. The second thing I might look at here before actually doing the addition is getting these two fractions into the same form. So either changing them both into improper fractions or changing them both into mixed numbers. What I'm going to do is quickly just change this into a mixed number as well. So that gives us 2 1/4 plus, and 7 goes into 8 once, remainder 1, so 1 1/7. And then all we're really doing is then adding two mixed numbers together style question. So we're going to first of all write out 2 in an empty fraction plus 1 in an empty fraction, and we're going to find a common denominator. So the lowest common multiple of 4 and 7 is 28, so that can go at the bottom of each of those. And then I'm asking myself the same questions as before. 4 multiplied by what gives me 28, so I need to multiply the bottom by 7, so multiply the top by 7, so it gives us 7 at the top here. And I need to multiply the bottom here by 4, so multiply the top by 4. So that's 4 up at the top. And then I can simply add those together. So 2 plus 1 is 3, 7 plus 4 is 11, so I end up with 3 and 11/28. And that's a typical exam question. Okay, so multiple stages there. Take your time, keep referring back to your order of operations, look out for opportunities to simplify, and try and make sure if you are adding things together, they're in the same form, whether it be both improper fractions or both mixed numbers. We'll quickly look at one more example where we have this time 2/5 outside a bracket with a quarter plus 2 1/3 in it. Now, a couple of things about this. First of all, we have the 2/5 directly in front of the bracket, so that's a multiplication. 2/5 is multiplying this bracket, so in our order of operations, we're going to consider multiplication here. But the fact that there is brackets here, which is the very first thing we deal with in our order of operations, means we need to deal with this quarter plus 2 1/3 first. So what we're going to do is we're going to just start to write this out on the next line. We're going to leave the 2/5 at the front there, in front of that bracket, and we're going to keep the brackets until we've actually done the calculation inside. We are going to be adding these two. So if I want to add two fractions together, remember what I've often said is first step is to write out your empty fractions first. So that's a fraction plus 2 and a fraction. We're then looking at our denominators here, because remember, if I want to add two fractions together, I must have a common denominator. So these 4 and 3 are different numbers. I need the lowest common multiple of 4 and 3. So I can go up my 4 times table till I get a number in the 3 times table. So that's going to be 12. And that goes at the bottom of each. This is now our common denominator. I've then got to, as before, multiply the 4 here by 3 to get 12. So because I've multiplied the bottom by 3, I need to multiply the top by 3. So 3 times 1 is 3. And with the second fraction, I've had to multiply the bottom part, 3, by 4 to get 12. So if I've multiplied the bottom by 4, I need to multiply the top by 4. So 1 times 4 is 4. I can then actually add the two fractions together. Now, one thing I'm going to do when I add the fractions here, I'm going to write out that 2/5 first, is get rid of the brackets. Now, when I get rid of the brackets though, I've got to remember that this 2/5 here was multiplying this bracket. Now, we don't put a multiplication symbol in this point here because we know that when we see something in front of a bracket, we are multiplying it. But when we get rid of those brackets, we are going to need to put the multiplication symbol in here. I can then add the two fractions together. So the first one is just a proper fraction. In other words, there's no whole number in front of there. So when I'm adding these two together, effectively it's 0 at the front here, plus 2 is 2. And then I add the fractional part, so 3/12 plus 4/12 gives me 7/12. And then we have a multiplication problem. Now, if I am multiplying two fractions together, remember we need to have the second fraction here written as an improper fraction. We can't deal with it using top times top, bottom times bottom when we've got a mixed number here. So 2 multiplied by 12 is 24, plus 7 is 31. So the second fraction here will become 31 over 12. The first fraction is just going to drop down and stay the same, 2/5 times 31 over 12. So I'm just going to go with top times top, bottom times bottom. So 2 times 31 is 62, and 5 times 12 is 60. And this can be simplified down to 31 over 30. Now I can leave it as 31 over 30, that's perfectly acceptable and I would get full marks for doing that, but I would want to maybe change that into 1 and 1/30. Remember 30 goes into 31 once, remainder 1, and that's how I can change it to a mixed number.